Tonight, we have endeavored to celebrate pastors, to honor pastors, to recognize what you've done and what you are doing. But the important thing to understand is that no matter how much we honor pastors, there is one who can honor you better than we could ever do. It's his endorsement, it is his respect that we seek as leaders and pastors. Well, tonight, there is a narrative in the Old Testament that is a great example of God honoring pastors. It's found in Numbers chapter 17. If you don't mind, can I read to you the word of the Lord? In Numbers chapter 17 is recorded these words. Then the Lord spake to Moses, saying, Speak to the sons of Israel, and get from them a rod for each father's household, 12 rods from all their leaders according to their father's household. You shall write each name on his rod, and write Aaron's name on the rod of Levi. For there is one rod for the head of each of their father's households. You shall then deposit them in the tent of meeting in front of the testimony, where I will meet you. It will come about that the rod of the man whom I choose will sprout. Thus I will lessen from upon myself the grumblings of the sons of Israel who are grumbling against you. Moses therefore spoke to the sons of Israel, and all the leaders gave him a rod apiece, for each leader according to their father's household, 12 rods, with Aaron's rod being among them. So Moses deposited the rods before the Lord in the tent of the testimony. Now the next day, Moses went into the tent of the testimony, and behold, the rod of Aaron of the house of Levi had sprouted and put forth buds and produced blossoms, and it bore ripe almonds. Moses then brought out all the rods from the presence of the Lord to the sons of Israel, and they looked, and each man took his rod. But the Lord said to Moses, Put back the rod of Aaron before the testimony, to be kept as a sign against the rebels, that you may put an end to their grumblings against me, so that they will not die. Thus Moses did, just as the Lord commanded him, so he did. Beloved, tonight, would you help me mark this message? If you would, find a pastor near you. Take your glass and lift it towards him. And would you look him in his good eye? And say to him, Pastor, this bud's for you. This bud's for you. Most of us in here tonight can remember the old Budweiser advertisement that coined that infamous phrase, this bud's for you. But in order to appreciate the cleverness of that advertisement and that slogan, you must consider and take into consideration the context for which it is said. For you see, in many cultures, when you wanted to bless someone, when you wanted to confer a blessing or an endorsement upon them, what you would do is you would propose a toast. You would toast them, and toasting was a way to declare and to announce to all who are around that you were, in essence, validating who they were and what they were doing. You were authenticating to everyone who's around who that person was and what they were doing, that the toast applied to them, and therefore you are honoring them. Well, for the ritual as it proceeds, one would make this declarative statement, and after the declarative statement is made, it would often end by saying something to the effect, here's to you. Oh, you ain't been saved all your life. After you bless them and endorse them, you would end by saying, here's to you. And everyone who agreed would say, hear, hear. Well, not so long ago, Budweiser decided that they would come along and they would contemporize and personalize this ritual by promoting the idea that if you wanted to confer a blessing on someone, if you wanted to show them honor and respect, you no longer had to think of a whole lot of words to say. All you had to do was lift up a cold one and tell them, this bud's for you. Well, beloved, I submit to you tonight that in their attempt to contemporize and personalize this ritual, they messed around and plagiarized. Not only did they steal the statement, but the relationship that it has to the ritual. For long before there was even a Budweiser or an Anheuser-Busch, God was billboarding buds. God had already coined the phrase. God had already established this ritual. It's right here in Numbers chapter 17 where God offers a toast to Aaron on behalf and before Moses and all the people. God lifted the rod and the staff and declared, this bud's for you. Well, I believe that God is still endorsing and making toasts today. He's still doing it in our time and in our world. And the pastors here tonight, whom we are honoring, has received a toast from the Lord. Well, he sent me by tonight to stand in proxy and to honor you tonight on his behalf, to let you know that what you're doing is important, to let you know that he's behind you, to let you know tonight that this bud's for you. Well, you do recognize that whenever God blesses your ministry, whenever he allows from your ministry a believer to be budded, whenever he allows disciples to blossom, that is God's way of endorsing you. That is God's way of validating you and affirming that this bud's for you. And so for the rest of our time tonight together, let me share with you just three reasons in the text why God endorses pastors, why God would stand up behind the banister of glory and lift his rod and his staff, if you would lift his glass and declare to the people you serve, this bud's for you. Three reasons very quickly, then we'll be done for tonight. The first reason that the text tells us that God would declare this bud's for you, the first reason is to hush the haters. Have I a witness? God will offer such a toast to hush the haters. Look at the text. The text tells us at the latter portion of verse 5, he tells Moses that, listen, this is why I'm doing this. Thus I will lessen from upon myself the grumblings of the sons of Israel who are grumbling against you. The reason God endorses pastors is to hush the haters. You know you have some haters in your church. You do recognize that there are those individuals who don't like what you are doing and the fact that you are there. Aaron had them and you're going to have them too. When you have time, read chapter 16, the story about Korah. Korah and his not so merry men, they got together and was going to overthrow Moses and Aaron. But God stepped in and he decided, you know what, I'll just open up the earth and let the earth swallow you whole. Put a pin right there. Listen, you better be careful how you mess with the preacher. He swallowed them whole. But there was a sleeper cells. There were still some who were still hanging out that was ready to take on Moses and Aaron. And so God decided, I'm going to make a toast so you'll all understand. And so to hush the haters, he made this toast and declared this bud's for you. There were still some hellions in the camp that God had to deal with. And as pastors, we need to understand the dynamic of what pastoring is. Dr. Aubrey Malphurs, he shared that when you move into an established church and you take the pastorate, that you really pivot in three positions. He says, first of all, you will be the pastor. Secondly, after about 10 years, you become our pastor. And finally, after 30 years, you become my pastor. But in the meantime, you're going to have some haters hating on you. But don't despair. Don't despair. If you ever want to silence the enemy, mess around and let God bless you. Mess around and allow God to blossom you. Allow God to speak on your behalf, and haters will begin to hush. That's what David meant when he said that he prepares a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Y'all remember that? He said, you anoint my head till my cup runneth over. There's that cup again, this buds. For you. So the first reason why God will toast you and endorse you and honor you is to hush the haters. There's another reason in the text. Not only will God endorse you and will make this bud for you in order to hush the haters, but secondly, the text tells us he'll do that to affirm his appointment. To affirm his appointment. The beginning of verse 5 says that it will come about that the rod of the man whom I choose will sprout. There will come a time when folk will actually question your very anointing. They will question the very anointing on your life. They will challenge the very fact of whether or not you are even qualified to do the work of the Lord. They'll challenge the very fact. They'll quickly admit, I didn't vote for you. They'll even have the audacity to tell your pastor, I kind of like the way you preach, but the previous pastor preached a little bit better than. But God wanted to affirm the appointment. He wanted to affirm his appointment, that this is the man that I've chosen for this time. And listen, there's something very interesting about this whole pericope and this narrative that I noticed. Did you notice that in this whole episode, that everybody's talking, Moses is talking, God is talking, the enemy is talking, but Aaron did not say a word. I think there's a lesson there. Listen, you don't have to talk yourself up. You don't have to fight your own battles. All you have to do is be still and be quiet and let God speak for you. The reason Aaron didn't have to speak is because God was doing all of the speaking. Kind of remind me of the old mafia. You remember the mafia and Tony Soprano and them and Godfather. There are times when fellas have a problem with an individual who seem to be moving up in the ranks pretty quickly. And as they move up in the ranks, and now all of a sudden they right next to the boss, and they begin to gripe and grumble about all of the advantages he's getting. And while they're sitting down in the Italian restaurant over spaghetti or lasagna or whatever they eat in the mafia, the boss would make a toast and lift his glass. And in essence, he would declare that no one is to touch him because now he's a made man. Tony merely was affirming the appointment. And that's what God does for us pastors. Listen, all you have to do is sit at the table. As long as you're sitting at the table and you're doing what God tells you to do, rest assured, when the time comes, God will tell all who are around, don't you touch him. He's a made man. You read the book, didn't you? It says, touch not my anointed and do my prophet no harm. So not only will this bud be for you to hush the haters, but also to affirm your appointment. There's one more reason in the text. Not only will God toast you, and this bud will be for you, in order to hush the haters, not only to affirm the appointment, but finally, God does this to protect his program. Have I a witness? Verse 10 says, but the Lord said to Moses, put back the rod of Aaron before the testimony to be kept as a sign against the rebels, that you may put an end to their grumblings against me, so that they will not die. Listen, God will cause your ministry to blossom in the present in order to preserve his program in the future. You do realize that God is really more concerned that you respect the position than the person in the position. He's going to protect the position, and if you're protected in the position, then the person is protected. Whether you like the pastor or not, you have to respect the position. For God has anointed the position in order to protect the person and his program. Every time they walked into the tabernacle, they may not have seen Aaron, but the budded rod reminded them to respect the high priest's position. It reminded them that God has already spoken, and whoever is the high priest now, it wasn't, Aaron was dead and gone, but his rod remained in that ark of the covenant because God wanted generation after generation to know that whomever is in this high priest position, you've got to respect him, and God protects his program. God protects his program. So when God buds your life and God blesses your ministry, just know he's protecting the program. And don't think you're going to be there always. I don't care how young you are, you're going to get old. And so recognize that it's not just the person, it's the position. And God is protecting his program. So pastors, tonight, I'm glad that God has made a toast on your behalf. As much as we wanted to honor you tonight, and hopefully we've done the best we could, God wanted you to know tonight that he sees what you're doing. He knows how hard it is. And while you have your fancy clothes on, he decided, I tell you what I'll do, I'll make a toast tonight. I know that you need to hush your haters, so this bud's for you. Someone's doubting your appointment. This is to affirm your appointment. This bud's for you. Somebody's worried about the program. It's going to fall apart if you leave. Well, he stopped by to let you know he's protecting his program. This bud for you. But before I close the bar down tonight, there's one more toast that I think you ought to know about. For Warren Wiersbe says that, in essence, this experience of Aaron's rod and budding in the tabernacle, in the tent, that it is a beautiful picture. It is Christotelic of Jesus. He says, in essence, that God literally told Moses to take 12 dead sticks and place them in a tabernacle. You do know a tabernacle is a temporary dwelling place. He says, take 12 dead sticks and put those 12 dead sticks in a temporary dwelling place. And the one whom I endorse, the one whom I choose, it will spring to life. Life will come to a dead stick. Can we have church for a moment? The way you know who is truly the anointed one is when life comes to a dead stick. Well, if you take out your telescope and stand in the tabernacle and the tent, you can see all the way to the tomb. And there's a tomb down through history. But on your way to that tomb, there's 11 other tombs you can stop at if you want to. You can stop at Adam's tomb. You can stop at Abraham's tomb. You can stop at Isaac and Jacob's tomb. You can stop at Moses' tomb. You can stop at David and Solomon's tomb. Just keep on looking. You can stop at all of those tombs. Isaiah, Zephaniah, and Zechariah and Hezekiah. You can Obadiah. You can look in their tomb, but they're dead. But keep on looking. There's a tent and a tabernacle somewhere past Calvary. There's a tent and a tabernacle where Joseph's old tomb is there. And I told you it's a temporary dwelling place. You do know you only need it for 3 nights and 3 days. That's the kind of neighbor I love, the kind that gives stuff back. And after 3 nights and 3 days, that dead stick that they nailed to a dead stick took him down and placed him in a temporary dwelling place. But on that 3rd day, just like God would do, he says, listen, the dead stick that buds, that's my man. That's my anointed one. That's my Christ. And can you see it now as he steps out on resurrection ground? Can you see it with his hands lifted to the air, declaring all power is in his hands? Can you hear the divine creator of the universe speaking from heaven and saying, this is my beloved son. This buds for you. God bless you tonight. God keep you.